The fluorescent lights of Hartman's Toy Emporium cast a cheerful glow over 6-year-old Lily Adams's face as she gazed longingly at the display of dollhouses. Her small fingers pressed against the glass showcase, leaving smudges that the store clerk would later wipe away with a resigned sigh. The particular dollhouse that had captured Lily's attention was a Victorian-style masterpiece, complete with miniature furniture, tiny picture frames, and a wraparound porch with delicate railings. At $129.99, it might as well have been $1 million to single mother Rebecca Adams. "Can we get it, Mum, please?" Lily's hazel eyes, so like her father's, sparkled with hope. "I promise I'll keep my room clean forever and ever." Rebecca glanced at the price tag and felt her stomach twist. The heating bill was due next week, and Jason's child support check was late, again. She'd taken on extra shifts at Clearwater Medical Center, where she worked as a nurse, but the money always seemed to vanish on necessities before she could save anything for extras like expensive toys. "Maybe next week, sweetheart," Rebecca said gently, tucking a strand of Lily's chestnut hair behind her ear. "We need to get groceries today, remember?" Lily's shoulders slumped, her earlier enthusiasm deflating like a punctured balloon. She nodded bravely, but her eyes welled with tears she was trying desperately to hold back. "I understand," she whispered, though her quivering lip betrayed her disappointment. Rebecca's heart broke a little, as it always did when she had to deny her daughter something that would bring her joy. 3 years after the divorce, she still hadn't found her financial footing. Between rent, daycare, and the medical bills from Lily's asthma episodes last winter, there was never enough left over for luxuries. "Come on, let's go get those chicken nuggets you like," Rebecca suggested, hoping to redirect Lily's attention. "And maybe we can make our own dollhouse this weekend. With cardboard and paint, wouldn't that be fun?" A man in an impeccable charcoal suit stood nearby, seemingly absorbed in examining a remote-controlled helicopter. Something about his presence felt out of place in the children's toy store, like finding a wolf among sheep. His polished leather shoes and the subtle gleam of an expensive watch marked him as someone accustomed to wealth. While Rebecca gently guided her reluctant daughter away from the dollhouse, she noticed him glancing in their direction. "Your dollhouse will still be here next week," Rebecca promised, though she knew it was likely an empty one. Next week would bring the same financial constraints, the same hard choices between wants and needs. As they made their way to the checkout with a modest basket containing bread, milk, and the promised chicken nuggets, Rebecca felt a strange, prickling sensation on the back of her neck. The man in the suit was now standing behind them in line, his shopping basket empty except for a small stuffed elephant. The cashier, a teenager with purple-streaked hair and a name tag that read Amber, smiled at Lily. "Find everything okay today?" Before Rebecca could answer, the well-dressed stranger stepped forward. Without a word, he placed a stack of crisp $100 bills on the counter, easily $10,000 or more, and nodded toward Rebecca and Lily. "Excuse me?" Rebecca stepped backward instinctively, pulling Lily closer to her side. "What is this?" The man's eyes, a startling shade of blue, met hers directly. "My name is Daniel Morgan. I'd like to pay for your groceries and that dollhouse your daughter was admiring." Rebecca stiffened. "I appreciate the offer, but we don't accept money from strangers." "I understand your caution," Daniel replied, his voice calm and measured. "I'm the CEO of Morgan Enterprises. Perhaps you've heard of us? We own Clearwater Medical Center." Rebecca's eyes widened. Of course she knew Morgan Enterprises. The company name was emblazoned on her paychecks, but why would the CEO be interested in helping them? "You work at Clearwater, don't you?" he continued. "Nursing department, if I'm not mistaken." A chill ran down Rebecca's spine. "How do you know where I work?" Daniel's expression softened. "Your ID badge is visible in your purse." Rebecca glanced down, seeing her hospital badge partially exposed in her open handbag. "Mom?" Lily tugged at Rebecca's sleeve, confusion written across her young face. "Who is that man?" Before Rebecca could answer, Daniel crouched down to Lily's level. "I'm someone who believes that good things should happen to good people." He stood up again, addressing Rebecca. "Please accept this, no strings attached." The teenage cashier looked between them awkwardly, clearly uncertain how to proceed with this unusual transaction. Other customers began to notice the scene, some openly staring while others pretended not to watch. "Why would you do this for complete strangers?" Rebecca asked, suspicion lacing her voice. She'd been through too much to believe in random acts of kindness from wealthy men. Life had taught her that generosity usually came with hidden costs. "Because 20 years ago, someone did something similar for me when I desperately needed it," Daniel replied. His eyes held a distant look, as though gazing into the past. "I've been looking for the right opportunity to pay it forward." The other customers in line were beginning to whisper behind their hands. Rebecca felt her cheeks burning with a mixture of embarrassment and confusion. "Please take your money back, Mr. Morgan," Rebecca said firmly. "We're fine." Daniel nodded respectfully and retrieved the cash. "I understand. Perhaps there's another way I can help." As Rebecca guided Lily toward the exit, leaving their unpurchased groceries behind, the store manager approached Daniel, recognition dawning on his face. "Mr. Morgan, what an honor to have you visit our store. Is there anything I can assist you with today?" Daniel smiled politely, but kept his eyes on Rebecca's retreating figure. "Actually, there is. That dollhouse the little girl was looking at. I'd like it delivered to this address." He handed the manager a business card, with an address hastily scribbled on the back. Outside in the parking lot, Rebecca helped Lily into her car seat, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Her hands trembled slightly as she buckled her daughter in. "Mom, why did that man want to give us money?" Lily asked, her young mind struggling to comprehend the interaction. Rebecca sighed, searching for an explanation that would make sense to a 6-year-old. "Some people like to help others, sweetheart, but we need to be careful about accepting big gifts from people we don't know. Even if they seem nice," Lily persisted. "Sometimes, especially if they seem nice," Rebecca replied, remembering lessons learned the hard way during her marriage to Jason. Charm could mask manipulation. Generosity could be a tool for control. As Rebecca started the engine of her aging Honda Civic, she noticed a business card tucked under the windshield wiper. The embossed logo of Morgan Enterprises gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. Scrawled on the back in elegant handwriting was a message. "Some opportunities come once in a lifetime. This is yours. Call this number if you change your mind." Rebecca hesitated before slipping the card into her pocket, unsure whether to throw it away or keep it. As she pulled out of the parking space, she glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Daniel Morgan standing by the store entrance, watching them leave. That evening, after tucking Lily into bed with stories and reassurances that they would be fine without fancy toys, Rebecca sat at her small kitchen table nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Bills were spread before her like a losing hand of cards. The electricity notice showed an overdue balance, and the rent increase letter stared up at her mockingly. She pulled Daniel Morgan's business card from her pocket and turned it over in her fingers, contemplating the elegant script and the promise it represented. Was this a genuine offer of help, or something more complicated? In her experience, wealthy men didn't hand out money to struggling single mothers without expecting something in return. Yet there had been something in his eyes, a sincerity that nagged at her skepticism. She had gotten good at reading people during her years of nursing. It was sometimes the only way to know when a patient was hiding pain, or when a doctor was too proud to admit uncertainty. What Rebecca couldn't possibly know was that Daniel Morgan's appearance in their lives wasn't as random as it seemed, and that the connection between them ran deeper than employer and employee. The business card sitting on her table represented not just financial help, but the first thread in unraveling a mystery that had shaped both their lives. 3 days after the encounter at Hartman's Toy Emporium, Rebecca arrived home from a grueling 12-hour shift to find a large package leaning against her apartment door. The return address revealed it was from the toy store. Her heart sank as she realized what it must be. "What's that, Mommy?" Lily asked, bouncing excitedly beside her as Rebecca fumbled with her keys, exhaustion making her movements clumsy. "I'm not sure, honey," Rebecca lied, knowing exactly what and who had sent it. She ushered Lily inside their modest 2-bedroom apartment and set the box aside, determined to return it unopened. Mrs. Patel, their elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The scent of warm spices filled the apartment. "I hope you don't mind," she said with her gentle Indian accent. "I made chicken curry. That little one has quite the appetite." "Thank you so much, Mrs. Patel. You're a lifesaver." Rebecca smiled gratefully, though the weight of another favor she couldn't properly repay added to her burden. After Mrs. Patel left, Lily circled the mysterious package like a shark, sensing blood. "Can we open it? Please." "Not now, sweetie. Let's have dinner first." Rebecca bought herself time, unsure how to explain to her daughter that they couldn't accept this gift, especially when she knew how desperately Lily wanted that dollhouse. Later that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Rebecca sat cross-legged on her living room floor and stared at the unopened box. Curiosity battled with pride. Finally, she reached for her phone and pulled out Daniel Morgan's business card. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. Daniel Morgan speaking. Mr. Morgan, this is Rebecca Adams. Her voice sounded smaller than she intended. From the toy store. Rebecca, he responded, as if he'd been expecting her call. I was hoping to hear from you. You sent the dollhouse. It wasn't a question. I did. I can't accept it. The words were firm despite the tremor in her voice. And I need you to stop. Whatever this is, have dinner with me, he interrupted. Just dinner. I have a proposition I'd like to discuss with you. Rebecca's grip tightened on her phone. Mr. Morgan, Daniel, please. Daniel, she corrected herself. I don't know what you think is happening here, but I'm not interested in any propositions. A soft chuckle came through the line. Not that kind of proposition, I assure you. This is a business matter, something that could benefit both you and your daughter. How do you even know I have a daughter? The question had been nagging at her since their first encounter. A pause. You mentioned her at the store, didn't you? Had she? Rebecca couldn't remember. Something felt off, but she couldn't quite place what it was. One dinner, he persisted, at a public restaurant of your choosing. After that, if you want nothing more to do with me, I'll respect your wishes completely. Rebecca glanced at the stack of bills on her coffee table, then at the dollhouse box. What did she have to lose except an evening of her time? Fine. One dinner, tomorrow night at Carlton's on Main Street, 7 o'clock. She named a restaurant nice enough to be respectable, but not so upscale that she'd feel completely out of place. I'll be there. Thank you, Rebecca. The following evening, Rebecca stood in front of her bedroom mirror, scrutinizing her appearance. She'd settled on a navy blue dress that she normally saved for job interviews. Conservative but flattering, her blonde hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she'd applied just enough makeup to look polished without seeming like she was trying too hard. Mrs. Patel had agreed to watch Lily again, giving Rebecca a knowing smile that made her blush and insist, it's just a business meeting. Carlton's was buzzing with the Thursday night crowd when Rebecca arrived. Daniel was already seated at a corner table, rising as the hostess led her over. In the warm lighting of the restaurant, he looked even more imposing than he had in the toy store, his broad shoulders filling out his tailored suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. You look lovely, he said, pulling out her chair. Thank you for being punctual, she replied, deflecting the compliment as she sat down. After ordering drinks, a glass of Cabernet for her, Scotch neat for him, Daniel leaned forward slightly. I imagine you have questions. Several, Rebecca admitted, starting with why the CEO of a major healthcare conglomerate is suddenly interested in helping a random nurse and her daughter. Daniel took a measured sip of his Scotch. You're not random, Rebecca. And I think you sense that too. A chill ran down her spine. What does that mean? He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a photograph, sliding it across the table. Rebecca picked it up hesitantly. It showed a young woman with a baby, standing in front of a modest house with a white picket fence. Though the photo was faded with age, Rebecca immediately recognized her mother, Karen. That's my mother, she said slowly. And me, when I was about 6 months old. Where did you get this? The woman standing next to your mother is mine. Daniel pointed to another figure in the photo that Rebecca had overlooked. A tall, elegant woman, with Daniel's striking blue eyes. Rebecca stared at the photo, then back at Daniel. Our mothers knew each other. They grew up together in Millfield, best friends since elementary school, Daniel confirmed. My mother, Elizabeth, was your mother's maid of honor when she married your father. Rebecca's mind raced. Her mother had rarely spoken about her past before moving to the city. After her death from breast cancer when Rebecca was just 13, so many questions had been left unanswered. If our mothers were so close, why haven't our families stayed in touch? Why am I just meeting you now? The questions tumbled out before she could stop them. Daniel's expression darkened. That's a complicated story, one I only recently pieced together myself. After my father died last year, I found a box of my mother's belongings in his attic. Letters, photographs, diaries, things I never knew existed. The waiter arrived with their appetizers, temporarily halting their conversation. Once they were alone again, Daniel continued. My mother died when I was 10. Car accident. At least that's what my father told me. His voice remained steady, but Rebecca noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. According to her diaries, there was much more to the story. Rebecca felt a growing unease. I don't understand what any of this has to do with me or Lily. My mother's diaries mentioned a trust fund, Daniel explained, set up for her best friend's daughter, you, to be released on your 30th birthday or upon the event of your marriage, whichever came first. Rebecca's fork clattered against her plate. A trust fund? That's impossible. My mother never had money. We struggled after my father left. The money didn't come from your mother, it came from mine. Daniel pulled out several folded documents from an inside pocket and slid them across the table. My mother came from wealth, old money that my father quickly took control of after they married. These are copies of the original trust documents. Rebecca hesitated before picking up the papers, her hands trembling slightly. As she scanned the legal language, certain figures jumped out at her, primarily the sum of $500,000, designated for Karen Miller's daughter, Rebecca. $500,000? Rebecca whispered, unable to comprehend the number. This has to be some kind of mistake. It's no mistake. My father was the executor of the trust. He was supposed to notify you when you turned 30 or got married. Daniel's voice hardened. He never did. Rebecca's mind spun with implications. If what Daniel was saying was true, she should have received this money years ago, when she married Jason at 26, or at the very latest when she turned 30 last year. Why would your father hide this from me? She asked. My father wasn't an honorable man, Daniel said grimly. I believe he diverted funds from several trusts my mother established, including yours, to bail out his failing investments. Rebecca pushed her plate away, appetite gone. So there's no money left. That's where you're wrong. Daniel's eyes held hers steadily. When I discovered what he'd done, I hired forensic accountants to trace every penny. I've spent the past 6 months reconstructing and replenishing all the trusts he decimated, including yours. The restaurant seemed to fade away as Rebecca struggled to process everything. Are you saying... I'm saying that I've restored your trust fund to its full amount, plus interest. Approximately $750,000 is now sitting in an account with your name on it. Daniel reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. That money is legally and rightfully yours. Rebecca felt lightheaded. This kind of money would change everything. No more double shifts, no more choosing between paying the electric bill or buying new shoes for Lily's growing feet. Why didn't you just tell me this at the store? She asked, suddenly suspicious again. Why the dramatic gesture? Daniel looked slightly embarrassed. I'd been trying to track you down for months. When I saw you and Lily at the store, it seemed like an opportunity to make contact. He shrugged. I realize now it wasn't the most conventional approach. No, it certainly wasn't, Rebecca agreed, a small smile tugging at her lips despite herself. There's more to this story, Rebecca, Daniel said, his expression serious again. More that I discovered in those diaries. Things that connect our families in ways neither of us could have imagined. Rebecca sensed the weight behind his words. Whatever was coming next would change everything even more than the revelation of the trust fund. But before Daniel could continue, her phone rang. Mrs. Patel's number flashing on the screen. I need to take this, she said, heart racing as she answered. Hello? Rebecca, dear. I'm so sorry to interrupt your evening. Mrs. Patel's voice was tight with worry. It's Lily. She's having trouble breathing. I think it might be another asthma attack. I have to go, Rebecca said, already on her feet, panic rising in her throat. Lily's last severe asthma attack had resulted in a 3-day hospital stay. My daughter... I'll drive you, Daniel said firmly, signaling the waiter for the check. It'll be faster than waiting for a cab. Under normal circumstances, Rebecca would have refused, maintaining the careful boundaries she always established with men she barely knew. But these weren't normal circumstances, and Lily's well-being trumped everything else. Fine, she agreed, grabbing her purse. But we need to hurry. Daniel's sleek black Audi cut through the evening traffic with alarming speed. Rebecca clutched the door handle, torn between telling him to slow down and urging him to go faster. They reached her apartment building in record time, and Rebecca was out of the car before it fully stopped. Mrs. Patel met them at the door, her usual calm demeanor replaced with evident worry. She's in the bedroom. I've been using her inhaler as you showed me, but it doesn't seem to be helping much. Rebecca rushed to Lily's side, finding her daughter propped up against pillows, her small chest heaving with the effort to breathe. Lily's lips had taken on a frightening bluish tint, and the wheezing sound from her lungs was audible from across the room. Mommy, Lily gasped, reaching for Rebecca with a trembling hand. I'm here, baby. You're going to be okay. Rebecca's nurse training kicked in, allowing her to remain outwardly calm while her mind raced through assessment protocols. She checked Lily's pulse, too fast, and counted her respirations, too shallow and labored. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space. "How is she?" "We need to get her to the hospital," Rebecca said, already gathering Lily's emergency bag. "She needs a nebulizer treatment and possibly steroids." "My car's still running," Daniel replied. "Let's go." In the back seat of the Audi, Rebecca cradled Lily against her chest, murmuring reassurances while monitoring her breathing. Daniel caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "I'm taking you to Clearwater. It's closer than General, and I'll make sure she gets immediate attention." Rebecca nodded gratefully. At Clearwater Medical Center, Daniel's influence was immediately apparent. The moment they entered the emergency department, staff recognized him, and Lily was whisked into a treatment room without the usual triage delays. "Dr. Barnes will be here momentarily," a nurse assured them, already setting up the nebulizer. "Thank you, Jenna," Daniel said, clearly familiar with the staff. Rebecca raised an eyebrow at him as she helped Lily with her breathing treatment. "You really are the boss around here, aren't you?" "I try not to throw my weight around," he replied with a slight shrug. "But in emergencies, it has its advantages." Dr. Barnes, a pediatric pulmonologist Rebecca knew by reputation but had never worked with directly, arrived promptly. He conducted a thorough examination of Lily, listening to her lungs and checking her oxygen saturation levels. "Her airways are significantly constricted," he reported. "We'll need to administer intravenous steroids and keep her on the nebulizer. I'd like to admit her overnight for observation." Rebecca nodded, having expected as much. "Thank you, Doctor." As Dr. Barnes wrote up admission orders, Daniel stepped into the hallway to make a phone call. Rebecca heard fragments of his conversation, something about ensuring a private room and bringing in a specialist for consultation. By midnight, Lily was resting comfortably in a private room on the pediatric floor. Her breathing improved after 2 nebulizer treatments and the first dose of steroids. Rebecca sat beside her bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall in a more regular rhythm. Daniel returned with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Rebecca. "I thought you could use this." "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup with both hands. "Not just for the coffee, but for everything. Getting us here so quickly, making sure Lily got immediate care." She hesitated. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't owe me anything," Daniel said, pulling a chair beside hers. "How is she doing?" "Better. The treatments are working." Rebecca took a sip of the coffee, strong and sweet, exactly how she preferred it. Another detail Daniel had somehow gotten right. "Dr. Barnes says her oxygen levels are improving, but they want to monitor her overnight." Daniel nodded, his gaze moving to Lily's sleeping form. "She looks like you." "Everyone says she looks like her father," Rebecca replied automatically, then paused. "At least, I always thought she did." Daniel seemed about to say something, but then stopped himself. After a moment, he changed course. "We didn't finish our conversation at dinner." "No, we didn't." Rebecca studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. "You said there was more to the story, more connections between our families." Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "What I'm about to tell you might sound difficult to believe, but I have evidence to back it up." The intensity in his blue eyes made Rebecca's pulse quicken. "Go on." "My mother's diaries contained entries about your mother's marriage," Daniel began carefully. "It seems that your parents had difficulties conceiving a child." Rebecca frowned. This wasn't news to her. "Yes. My mother told me they tried for years before having me. She always called me her miracle baby. You were a miracle, but not in the way you might think." Daniel chose his next words with deliberate care. "According to my mother's diary, your parents explored various fertility options, including donor eggs. My mother volunteered to be that donor." The coffee cup slipped from Rebecca's fingers, spilling its contents across the linoleum floor. "What are you saying?" Daniel retrieved napkins from a nearby dispenser and mopped up the spill. When he looked up, his expression was gentle but unwavering. "I'm saying that biologically speaking, my mother was your genetic mother. Your mother carried you and gave birth to you, but the egg was my mother's." Rebecca felt as though the room was spinning. "That's impossible. My mother would have told me something that important." "Would she have?" Daniel asked softly. This was the early 1990s. Egg donation was still relatively new and rarely discussed openly. Many parents chose never to tell their children about donor conception. "You can't just drop something like this on me and expect me to believe it," Rebecca hissed, mindful of Lily sleeping nearby. "Where's your proof?" Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. DNA test results. After I found my mother's diaries, I had my suspicions. I collected a DNA sample from a coffee cup you used during a hospital fundraiser 6 months ago. You did what? Rebecca's voice rose in indignation. That's a violation of— I know, Daniel interrupted, and I'm sorry. But I needed to know the truth before approaching you. He held out the envelope. These results show a 25% shared DNA match between us, consistent with being half-siblings who share a mother. Rebecca stared at the envelope, but didn't take it. Half-siblings? The words felt foreign on her tongue. Yes, Daniel confirmed. Different fathers, same mother. Biologically speaking, I'm your half-brother, Rebecca. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Her mind raced through memories of her childhood, trying to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew about herself. Had there been signs, comments from relatives about how different she looked from both her parents? Her mother's occasional melancholy when discussing family resemblances? Why didn't your father tell me any of this after your mother died? Rebecca asked, still struggling to process the implications. If he knew about the trust fund, he must have known about this. Daniel's expression hardened. My father did everything in his power to erase my mother's legacy after her death. He remarried quickly, moved us across the country, and forbade any mention of her or her family and friends, including your mother. Rebecca glanced at Lily, seeing the child's features in a new light. If Daniel was telling the truth, then Lily shared genetic material with his family too. Does this mean that Lily is related to you as well? She would be my niece, Daniel confirmed, a hint of warmth entering his voice. Which might explain her asthma. It runs in our maternal line. I had it severely as a child. Rebecca shook her head, overwhelmed. This is too much. I need time to process all of this. Of course, Daniel said, standing. I should let you rest, but there's one more thing you should know. He hesitated, clearly weighing his words. My mother's death wasn't an accident. The blunt statement jerked Rebecca's attention back to him. What do you mean? The diaries, along with some old police reports I managed to obtain, suggest that her car accident was staged. Daniel's voice was controlled, but Rebecca could sense the rage simmering beneath his composed exterior. I believe my father was responsible. Are you saying he murdered her? Rebecca whispered, horrified. I don't have conclusive proof yet, Daniel admitted, but I'm getting closer, and I think your mother knew something about it. There are references in the diaries to phone calls between them just days before my mother's death. Your mother was planning to visit, but suddenly cancelled. Rebecca remembered her mother's occasional nightmares, the way she would sometimes start at unexpected noises, her reluctance to discuss certain parts of her past. Had she been carrying this terrible secret all those years? After my mother died, your family moved away from Millfield, Daniel continued. Your father left shortly after. I think he was paid off to keep quiet about whatever he knew. My father abandoned us when I was 8, Rebecca said, the memory still painful after all these years. He never contacted us again. My mother had to work 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. Daniel nodded grimly. The timing fits. My father would have wanted to tie up loose ends, eliminate anyone who might know too much. A chilling thought occurred to Rebecca. If what you're saying is true, and your father was willing to hurt people to protect his secrets, then by investigating this, by finding me, I might be putting us both at risk, Daniel finished her thought. I know. But my father died last year, taking most of his secrets to the grave. I doubt his old associates would care much about ancient history now. Before Rebecca could respond, Lily stirred in the hospital bed, her eyes fluttering open. Mommy, she called weakly. Rebecca moved instantly to her daughter's side, smoothing back her hair. I'm here, sweetie. How are you feeling? Better, Lily whispered, her gaze moving past Rebecca to Daniel. Is that the man from the store? The one who wanted to buy me the dollhouse? Daniel approached the bed cautiously. Hello, Lily. I'm Daniel. I'm a friend of your mum's. Lily studied him with surprising intensity for a 6-year-old. You have eyes like mine, she observed innocently. Rebecca and Daniel exchanged startled glances. It was true. Lily's eyes were the same striking shade of blue as Daniel's, a feature Rebecca had always assumed came from Jason, whose eyes were a similar color. The realization seemed to settle into Rebecca's bones, making the genetic connection Daniel had claimed impossible to deny. She looked between her daughter and this man, her half-brother, and saw unmistakable similarities in the shape of their brows, the curve of their smiles, even certain mannerisms. Yes, we do have the same eyes, Daniel acknowledged with a gentle smile for Lily. To Rebecca he added in a low voice, I should go. You both need rest, and I've given you enough to think about for one night." As he turned to leave, Rebecca caught his sleeve. "Daniel, if all this is true about our mothers, about your father, what exactly are you hoping will happen now?" He looked back at her, his expression a complex mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I've spent most of my life feeling like something was missing, like there were pieces of my mother I could never recover. Finding out about you, it's like discovering a part of her is still here." His gaze shifted briefly to Lily. "I'm not expecting us to suddenly become a close-knit family, Rebecca, but I thought you deserved to know the truth and to have what rightfully belongs to you." Rebecca nodded slowly, still processing everything. "I'll need to verify all of this myself. Get independent DNA testing, review those trust documents with my own lawyer." "I would expect nothing less," Daniel replied with a hint of approval. "You have my number. Call me when you're ready to talk more." He moved toward the door, then paused. "And Rebecca, regardless of what you decide about the money or about us, your position at Clearwater is secure, no strings attached." After he left, Rebecca sat beside Lily's bed, watching her daughter drift back to sleep. The events of the evening replayed in her mind. The revelation of the trust fund, the even more shocking claim that Daniel was her half-brother, and the disturbing suggestion that his father had been involved in his mother's death. If Daniel was telling the truth, then everything Rebecca thought she knew about her family, her history, even her own identity, had been built on incomplete information. The woman she had called mother for 29 years was still her mother in every way that mattered. But biologically, she was related to a family she'd never known existed. And if Daniel was lying, but why would he? What could he possibly gain from such an elaborate deception? As dawn broke outside the hospital window, Rebecca made a decision. She would investigate Daniel's claims thoroughly, but she would do so cautiously. The promise of financial security for herself and Lily was too important to dismiss outright, but neither would she blindly trust a man who had appeared so suddenly in their lives, bearing gifts and revelations that seemed almost too dramatic to be true. What she couldn't possibly know was that Daniel himself didn't have the full story, and that the truths still hidden would shake the foundations of both their worlds even more profoundly than the revelations of this night. 2 weeks after Lily's hospital stay, Rebecca sat in her lawyer's office, staring at the documents spread across the mahogany desk. Frank Sullivan, a grey-haired attorney who had been her mother's friend and legal advisor, removed his reading glasses and leaned back in his chair. "It's legitimate, Rebecca, every word of it." He tapped the trust documents with his index finger. "The DNA test results are conclusive as well. There's no doubt that Daniel Morgan is your half-brother." Rebecca exhaled slowly, still struggling to fully accept what she had suspected was true. "And the money?" "All $750,000 has been deposited into the trust account as promised. After taxes and fees, you'll have access to approximately $680,000. Frank's expression softened. "Karen would be relieved to know you're finally receiving what Elizabeth intended for you." "You knew?" Rebecca's head snapped up. "You knew about all of this?" Frank nodded, guilt clouding his features. "Your mother swore me to secrecy. She was terrified of Richard Morgan, Daniel's father. After Elizabeth died, he made threats, implied that you and Karen could meet with accidents too if she ever revealed what she knew." Rebecca leaned forward. "And what exactly did my mother know, Frank?" The lawyer hesitated. "I only know pieces. Karen believed Richard was responsible for Elizabeth's death, but she had no concrete proof, just snippets of conversations, odd behaviors she'd observed when visiting their home." He sighed heavily. "Karen moved you both away and made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd protect you by keeping silent until it was safe. And now it's safe because Richard Morgan is dead," Rebecca concluded. "Precisely." Frank gathered the papers into a neat stack. "I'd recommend setting up a meeting with Daniel to discuss how you want to proceed. The funds are legally yours without qualification, but given the family connection, you might want to establish some parameters about his involvement in your life going forward." Rebecca nodded, her mind already racing ahead. The money would transform her and Lily's lives, but the family revelations were far more complex to navigate. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd alternated between gratitude toward Daniel and resentment that her entire identity had been upended by his disclosures. That afternoon, she picked Lily up from school and drove to the small park near their apartment. As Lily played on the swings, Rebecca pulled out her phone and dialed Daniel's number. "Rebecca," he answered immediately. I was hoping to hear from you. I've verified everything, she said without preamble. The trust, the DNA results, it's all true. A pause. Are you surprised? Part of me hoped you were wrong, she admitted. It would have been simpler, but less honest, he pointed out. How's Lily doing? Better. No asthma episodes since the hospital. Rebecca watched her daughter pump her legs enthusiastically on the swing, reaching for the sky. She asks about you sometimes, calls you the man with my eyes. Daniel's chuckle carried through the phone, warm and genuine. Smart kid. She is. Rebecca took a deep breath. We need to talk, Daniel, face to face, about the past, but more importantly, about what happens next. Name the time and place, he replied. They agreed to meet the following day at a quiet cafe away from the bustle of downtown. After hanging up, Rebecca called to Lily, who reluctantly abandoned the swings and skipped over to her mother. Sweetie, I need to tell you something important, Rebecca said, kneeling to meet her daughter's eyes she now recognized as a genetic gift from a grandmother Lily would never meet. Am I in trouble? Lily asked warily. No, honey, it's about family. Rebecca chose her words carefully. Remember Daniel, the man who helped us at the hospital? When Lily nodded, she continued, Well, it turns out that he's related to us. He's my brother, which makes him your uncle. Lily's brow furrowed as she processed this information. But you said you didn't have any brothers or sisters. I didn't know I had a brother until recently, Rebecca explained. Sometimes grown-ups discover new things about their families, even when they're older. Is he going to live with us? Lily asked with a child's practicality. Rebecca smiled. No, sweetheart, but we might see him more often. Would that be okay with you? Lily considered this seriously. Does he like board games? Uncle Jason never wants to play Candyland with me. I'm not sure, but we can ask him. Rebecca stroked her daughter's hair. And honey, Jason isn't actually your uncle. He's your father's brother, but your father and I aren't married anymore. I know that, Lily said with the exasperated patience of a child, explaining something obvious to an adult. But he's still Uncle Jason. And now I have Uncle Daniel too. She brightened suddenly. Does Uncle Daniel have kids I can play with? The question caught Rebecca off guard. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. He's not married. Then he must be lonely, Lily declared with certainty. We should invite him for dinner. You make good spaghetti, Mom. Rebecca laughed, amazed at her daughter's simple acceptance of this complicated situation. Maybe we will. Let me talk to him first, okay? The next day, Rebecca arrived at the cafe early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy. Daniel arrived precisely on time, dressed more casually than she'd seen him before in jeans and a blue sweater that matched his eyes. Their eyes, she corrected herself mentally. Thank you for meeting me, he said, settling into the chair across from her. I've been thinking about everything, Rebecca began, stirring her latte absently, about what this all means for me, for Lily, for the future. And, Daniel prompted gently, I've decided to accept the trust money, she said, not just because we need it, but because it was Elizabeth's wish. Your mother's wish, she corrected herself, still adjusting to the idea that they shared a biological mother. Daniel nodded. I'm glad. It's what she would have wanted. But there are conditions, Rebecca continued firmly. First, this doesn't mean you get to take over our lives. Lily and I are a family unit, and while I'm willing to let you be part of that gradually, it has to happen at our pace. Of course, Daniel agreed readily. I'm not looking to disrupt your lives, Rebecca. I just want the chance to know my sister and niece. Second, I want the complete truth. Everything you know about our mother, about her death, about what Karen knew. The distinction felt strange on her tongue. Karen would always be her real mother, regardless of biology. Daniel's expression grew serious. I've told you everything I know for certain, but there are still questions I'm trying to answer. My investigators are looking into the circumstances surrounding our mother's death, but many records have been lost or possibly destroyed. I want to be involved in that investigation, Rebecca insisted. Karen raised me, loved me, protected me. If she knew something that put her in danger, I deserve to know what it was. Fair enough. Daniel reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. This is yours. I found it among our mother's belongings. Rebecca opened the pouch and tipped its contents into her palm, a delicate gold locket on a thin chain. Inside was a tiny photograph of Elizabeth Morgan holding a newborn baby. Is that? Rebecca whispered. You, Daniel confirmed. She was there the day you were born. According to her diary, it was one of the happiest days of her life. Tears pricked at Rebecca's eyes as she fastened the locket around her neck, the weight of it both unfamiliar and somehow right. "There's something else," Daniel said hesitantly. "Something I only confirmed yesterday." He slid a folder across the table. "These are financial records from my father's private accounts. He made regular payments to someone for years after our mother's death. Substantial payments." Rebecca opened the folder, scanning the bank statements. A name caught her eye: Jason Wilson. "Jason? My ex-husband?" She looked up in confusion. "I don't understand." "Jason Wilson isn't who you think he is," Daniel said gently. "His real name is Jason Morgan. He's my cousin, my father's brother's son." The cafe seemed to tilt around Rebecca as the implications hit her. "Are you saying I was targeted? That my marriage was some kind of setup?" Daniel nodded grimly. "I believe my father orchestrated your relationship with Jason to keep tabs on you, to make sure you never learned the truth about your parentage or about our mother's death. The payments continued until your divorce." Rage and betrayal washed over Rebecca in alternating waves. "Lily," she gasped. "Is she—" "She's definitely Jason's biological child," Daniel assured her quickly. "The DNA test confirms that too. But Jason was working for my father when he married you, probably reporting everything you said and did." Rebecca thought back to her marriage, how Jason had appeared in her life so suddenly, pursued her so intently, how he'd been curious about her childhood, always asking about her mother, how he'd grown distant after Karen died, as if his mission had been accomplished. How quickly he'd abandoned them both when Lily was born. "He never loved me," she realized aloud. "Any of it." "I'm sorry," Daniel said, genuine remorse in his voice. "If I'd known sooner, I could have—" "You couldn't have done anything," Rebecca interrupted, gathering her composure. "You didn't know, none of us did." She took a steadying breath. "Except Karen. She must have suspected something. It would explain why she was always wary of Jason, why she tried to warn me off the relationship." They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in thoughts of the past and its tangled web of deception. Finally, Rebecca straightened her shoulders. "Well, that settles it," she said decisively. "Settles what?" Daniel asked. "My plans for the future." Rebecca closed the folder and handed it back to him. "I'm going to use part of the trust money to finish my nurse practitioner degree. Then I'm going to buy a house, a real home for Lily with a yard and a dog and all the things I've never been able to give her. And I'm going to find a job at a different hospital. No offense to Clearwater, but I need a fresh start somewhere that doesn't have connections to the past." Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And what about us? Our relationship?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. "I think I'd like to get to know my brother, slowly. And I think Lily should know her uncle." A small smile tugged at her lips. "She already wants you to come over for spaghetti dinner and play Candyland." The tension in Daniel's shoulders visibly eased. "I'm an undefeated Candyland champion, just so you know." "We'll see about that," Rebecca challenged, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "There's one more thing, Daniel, about our mother, Elizabeth. I'd like to visit her grave to pay my respects." "I'd be honored to take you," Daniel said softly. 6 months later, Rebecca stood on the porch of her new home, a charming 3-bedroom house with a fenced backyard and a swing set for Lily. The moving truck had just departed, leaving boxes stacked in every room. Through the open doorway, she could hear Daniel and Lily's laughter as they unpacked the kitchen, their voices raised in a competitive game of I Spy. The past half-year had brought profound changes to her life. The trust money had provided financial security she'd never known before. She'd completed her nurse practitioner certification and accepted a position at a pediatric clinic that valued her experience with childhood asthma. Most importantly, she and Daniel had slowly built a genuine sibling relationship, learning to trust each other despite the shadow of their shared past. The investigation into Elizabeth Morgan's death continued, but progress was slow. Some files had mysteriously disappeared, and witnesses were reluctant to speak about events from so long ago. Rebecca had made peace with the possibility that they might never know the full truth, choosing instead to focus on the present and the future. She fingered the locket that now rarely left her neck, thinking of the 2 mothers who had shaped her life, one through biology and intention, the other through love and sacrifice. Both had wanted the best for her, had tried to protect her in their different ways. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway drew her attention. A sleek silver Audi parked, and a tall woman emerged. Amanda, Daniel's girlfriend of 3 months. She waved to Rebecca as she retrieved a housewarming plant from the passenger seat. "Sorry I'm late," Amanda called. "The bakery took forever with the cake." Rebecca smiled and descended the porch steps to greet her. In another surprising twist of fate, she and Amanda had discovered they'd attended the same nursing school, though years apart. Their shared profession had provided common ground for friendship beyond their connection through Daniel. Inside, Lily shrieked with delight at the arrival of her favorite almost aunt and the promised cake. Daniel emerged from the kitchen, flour somehow smeared across his forehead from the cookies he'd been attempting to bake. "Help," he mouthed to Amanda, who laughed and moved to rescue his baking disaster. As Rebecca watched her newfound family together in her new home, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. From a simple maybe next week at a toy store to the life-changing appearance of a man with $10,000 on a store counter, every moment had led to this, a family rebuilt, not on lies and secrets, but on truth and forgiveness. Later that evening, after Lily had been tucked into her new bedroom with the Victorian dollhouse that now stood proudly on her dresser, Rebecca and Daniel sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the summer twilight. "Are you happy, Becca?" Daniel asked, using the nickname he'd recently adopted. Rebecca considered the question, not with the quick automatic response she might have given in the past, but with thoughtful honesty. "I am," she realized. "Not because of the money or the house, though those things help, but because for the first time in my life, I know who I really am, where I came from, who my people are." She bumped her shoulder against his. "It turns out one of them isn't so bad." Daniel chuckled, then grew serious. "I keep thinking about what our mother would say if she could see us now. Together, family. I think both our mothers would be happy," Rebecca said softly. Elizabeth and Karen, they were friends who became family in their own way. Now the circle is complete. As they sat in companionable silence, Rebecca thought about the dollhouse that had started it all. Like that miniature Victorian home, with its tiny furniture and delicate details, her life now felt crafted with intention and care. Not perfect. There were still rough edges to sand, relationships to build, truths to uncover, but real and solid and hers. From inside the house came the sound of Amanda's laughter, mingling with the quiet strains of music from the radio. Tomorrow would bring more unpacking, more settling in, more building of this new life. But for now, this moment was enough. Sitting beside her brother, both of them looking toward the future while honoring the past that had, against all odds, brought them together. In that quiet moment on the porch, Rebecca finally understood what her mother, both her mothers, had tried to give her all along, not just life itself, but the chance for that life to be lived fully, honestly, and surrounded by love. It had taken a strange encounter with a CEO and $10,000 on a counter to set everything in motion, but the destination had been worth every complicated step of the journey.